Welcome to the For Everyday Leaders podcast. Brandon Faust and Alex Holt here with you today. Alex, why don't you tell us what this podcast is all about?
Yeah, this podcast is all about helping people in the everyday spaces and moments of life. And today on the show, we have Alex Mislan. Alex is a product manager at Boardable, and she previously worked at Lessonly, which is now Seismic, for several years. She was previously a Division I basketball coach in various roles at IPFW, Butler, IUPUI, now IU Indianapolis. She's involved in various initiatives with foster care and adoption. She's also going to be in our Wayfinders Impact Studio Cohort for the fall of 2024. Alex is married to Chris, and they've got 2 kids.
Welcome, Alex.
Thank you.
Alex and Alex today.
Alex
and Alex.
It's going to be great.
Well, I want to say, too, you definitely played basketball in college, too. Remind me where.
Yes.
Somewhere in Wisconsin. I know this.
Wisconsin, Green Bay. Was very fortunate to be a part of a now only second to Tennessee women's basketball in the winningest program in Division I history.
Wow.
So just a little hoop knowledge dropping on you, if you didn't know. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And I know we have talked about Caitlin Clark before. So yes, so fun watching her do her thing here in Indy, which is awesome. Well, we met several months ago now, who became a mutual friend of ours, Akilah Webster, with Every Child Indiana, came. This was kind of like a crazy cool story. She came to one of our Start Something workshops with a kind of certain project in mind. And she came here. We had no relationship to her at the time because our friend Brian Shutt writes in the IBJ, and he was talking about grassroots entrepreneurship. And there was just kind of like a little piece about what Wayfinders was doing in that. And she responded to that invitation, registered, came to it, met her, got to know her, followed up with her. And she's like, I think there's someone named Alex that I need to connect you all together. And then we met up, and then you met with our team. I was supposed to be there, but I couldn't be there, and kind of walk through all of our Start Something framework. And now you're going to be jumping into our Impact Studio Cohort and all the things with us over the next several months, which has been really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, just like really cool situation with Akilah. Like, I was cold outreach from me on LinkedIn. Like, I just reached out cold to her, and I was like, hey, listen, it looks like what you're doing with Every Child is really cool. I'm trying to learn about the space. Would you be willing to grab coffee? And she just was so generous with her time, and has been so helpful as a connector for me. Awesome. Moving forward. Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. Well, we're going to go back a little bit and kind of tell us about life growing, and I don't know all of this, so it's always fun when we have guests and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Like I get to hear this all firsthand. But tell us what life was like for you growing up, and then we'll kind of go through the rest. I know we've talked about the basketball piece and some of this foster care adoption piece in there with Every Child Indiana and other things like that we'll get into a little bit more. But tell us where did it all start?
Yeah, Crown Point, Indiana. So that's where I was born, Northwest Indiana. I had just a wonderful upbringing, wonderful parents. I have a sister. She lives in Fishers now, so she's still near. Just had a really good family life, and really appreciate the way I was raised, the things that were brought into my life. But very quickly, I know we were talking about this a little bit with your young one before we got started today, but very quickly, I think my family realized that basketball was going to be a real pillar for my life. And it took over in that way, you know? So we would, early when I was young, we'd go to church on Sundays, and that eventually turned to basketball tournaments on Sundays. And so quickly, you know, kind of had this, juxtaposition of where we were spending our time and prioritizing. And it was a lot, you know, growing up as a kid, there was a lot of pressure around that kind of stuff. I remember a freshman game in high school, I had a coach from Purdue there, and I was like terrified. I didn't even shoot once. I didn't shoot the entire game. And she asked my coach after the game, she's like, did she shoot? You know, like, and so just had, you know, a little bit of like middle school kind of high profile, a lot of hype coming up. So I had coaches come watch me. It got more realistic as I went of like where the level was that I should actually be at. And so, you know, I had some like formative years through that, some really good learning. Ended up going to University of Southern Mississippi out of college or out of high school into college. If I could go back and do that again, I'm not sure I would, if I'm being honest. But ended up transferring after my freshman year to Green Bay, which was just, wow. I mean, like, talk about a formative experience in my life, and the people I was around, and the team, and the culture. My coach there just retired after, I think, something crazy like 17 seasons.
Wow.
And so just was really, really kind of made me who I was. Also was the place that I came back to Christ in college, and just kind of found my way through that. I would say definitely always believed in God, but I think it was more so kind of getting to that relationship again.
Yep.
And I mean, honestly, just got baptized 2 years ago. So like even through all of that, like believing in God, having that faith, it's taken me a while to actually like walk with Jesus.
Yeah.
So, I think it's taken some time to get there. But really awesome opportunities along the way to travel, to see the world through basketball. And over time have slowly seen like God reveal to me, like basketball was kind of an idol for me.
Yeah.
So it's been nice to even kind of have that knowledge and understanding now. But just really strong threads of, family, athletics was a huge piece of my upbringing. And I just felt really blessed to honestly to have the upbringing that I had. Yeah.
There's a lot of, rhetoric around youth sports and what does that look like? And you do hear a lot of the stories of people who are like, man, my, kid when they're 12 years old wanted nothing to do with this. And then there are people who are like, man, like the gift that sport is, right?
Yeah.
The structure, the being a part of a team, learning to, fail, learning to succeed, doing it together.
Yes.
And I think even at not the same level, but playing, college athletics, it's like, that's your family. Like you're eating every meal together. You're going on bus rides to the middle of nowhere college in America to play in front of, for us in soccer, it was like, there's 40 people here sometimes, right? Like, and you're like, and you do it together, and like the stories and all that kind of stuff. And so there is a place to say, hey, hold on, there's somebody who kind of went this path, and being able to sort out, here were the beautiful parts of it. Here were the challenges. Here, like even saying, basketball was probably this idol in my life as well. And seeing, how to parse that out now, as you look back and say, this was good parts, this was challenging parts.
I think the cool thing is to like look back on the journey and like the relationship I have with basketball, right? Like it is its own relationship in and of itself. And it ran its course. It did what it was supposed to do. It introduced me to my husband, right? Like there's pieces of it that,
that's awesome.
It did its job for me. And now it's something I still definitely care for and love, but it's not in my life the same way that it was before.
So take us then on the journey from college into career life. Cause I have to say, like being a baller and then being a product manager at a SaaS company are very different worlds. Very different. And I'm familiar with both and how different they are. So talk to us about after college and some of the coaching you got into and then how you've ended up kind of where you are today.
Windy journey. So loved coaching college basketball. My goodness. What a fun job. Particularly when I was single, it was a really fun job. But it really is more of a lifestyle than it is a profession. So as I found my husband, as we were thinking about having kiddos, we actually struggled with infertility. So, when Zeke finally got here after some trying, I think I just had this crisis of faith of just like, I don't want to work 70 hours a week and travel all over the country anymore. Like I want to be his mom, after something I've waited for so long is here. It really just like sharply changed the way that I was looking at the world. And so pretty much without a plan, left coaching, and was so lucky to find a home at, place called Starfish Initiative here in town, which is a nonprofit, works with the 21st Century Scholarship and a mentorship awesome framework stuff to help kids use that scholarship to get to college. And I really feel like I kind of started to grow up there and learn more about my world. College athletics is pretty like myopic in a lot of ways. And so started to learn about my community, about the world, so many awesome things there. It was I was doing events and realized that quickly that events were not my jam from like a craft perspective. So then moved to another nonprofit called Ascend. It's under the CICP umbrella. I focus on like workforce development. So something I was familiar with, working with employers and kiddos to like match and make sure that, you know, the brain drain of Indiana talent wasn't happening. So Ascend was really cool. And then when I was looking to leave, I got to touch like tech components at Ascend. We were building a platform and got to like really get in the weeds of that. And I really never had thought about that as work until that moment. And so my brother-in-law was employee, I think 5 at Lessonly.
Wow.
And so as I was thinking about making a move, he was like, you should really check it out. And I was like, okay. So ended up, I first interviewed for a product position there, got bounced to the services team. And honestly, like the rest was history there. So when I was looking at the job in the services department, I was like coaching for software. I was like, oh, I can do that.
Right.
You know, like I can coach.
Colliding.
I can do this. It's all about training.
That's
and
awesome.
So it really just kind of made a ton of sense. That journey, that ride at Lessonly was another, like Green Bay women's basketball and Lessonly were like 2 incredibly formative experiences in my life. Taught me a lot about my world, how I wanted to see the world, what I thought was valuable about teamwork, about success. And so Lessonly was just like really, really great. I would have stayed there until they kicked me out. And then the acquisition happened and things just changed. You know, it was different. And so have honestly been trying to kind of find my footing of what is it that I want to do after that moment. And I'm really excited about landing at Boardable and in product management. It just feels like an awesome, like, it feels like I'm finally getting to the capstone event, like getting to the place of doing, loving the craft that I'm like, wake up and do every day for a company that I'm really excited about what they do for the world.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I think it's, you know, one of our kind of flagship programs, but I think just such a critical conversation, you know, is like, there's some research that shows that only like 17% of people who get a college degree work a day in their life in that field. Like that's crazy numbers. Like last I checked, 17% is not very good.
No,
not even in baseball.
I majored
like,
in
if you're
math.
like a hitting .17 or whatever, that's not very good.
I majored in math. And I was planning on being an elementary school or a high school teacher and then coaching, right? Like that was kind of like, oh, that'll be the dream.
Right.
And then I did 1 round of like observation in my sophomore year of college, and I was like, nope,
doing that.
This is actually not the plan.
Hard out on that.
Yeah.
So what did you end up graduating? Like what major?
Yeah, I picked up a business minor because I was just like, I need something. So I had an education minor, a business minor, and a math major. And so if I hadn't gotten into college coaching, I probably would have done something like logistics, or I was looking at becoming an actuary, that sort of thing.
And that's where we talk so much about these transferable skills that are often, you might find them. You might not find what those skills are until you do a sport.
Oh, yeah.
You might not find what those are till you're in a different kind of team setting. You might not find what those are. Some people are like, man, I think science is awesome. I'm going to go be a chemist or a doctor or whatever it might be, you know, kind of a thing. But finding those, whether they're volunteer projects, whether they're, you know, jobs, that opportunities we have, whether they're teams we're part of, we see those transferable skills and then kind of like reflecting and exporting those and saying, hey, these can actually go here, here, and add value. Because when you were in college, you would have been like, what's SaaS?
Yeah,
you know?
Right.
Totally. And I think
that's what my daughter has every morning.
Right. Yeah. Same. I think that's honestly the biggest piece it's been difficult for me because I've always, basketball or athletics in general is like outputs, right? It's like points on the board, it's rebounds on the stat sheet. Like it's all of these things that you can kind of see. And so I think for me, it's always been hard to translate my skills. And I didn't get to that point. I started meeting with a professional coach about a year ago, and she has just been like, like I was telling her the other day, it just feels like lighthouse in the storm, right? Like she's the person who is able to, told her my life story and she's like, oh yeah, there's clearly all these threads here. And I was like, how? Like, I didn't even, and so for me, a lot of it's been based around problem solving. Like I have a knack for finding problems and then being, especially if I'm motivated by it, want to figure out how to get to an end result of fixing that thing, which bodes well to product management.
I would say, in the product development world, like that is what is needed. Yep. And I love hearing you talk about that thread that came out of coaching, right? Of I can coach players to shoot better, to score more points, whatever it is. I can also coach a product team. I can also coach a services team on how we develop something for an incredible customer experience and make someone's life better. Through what we're offering. Like that thread is, I think, like you said, it's kind of that art and science coming together of the world of coaching.
Yeah. And the one thing that people like, I get the question a lot, like, do you miss coaching? And the answer is no, I don't. Like there were a lot of things about it that I really loved. I don't miss recruiting at all. I don't miss talking to 16-year-olds at 10 p.m. about Gossip Girl, like not my jam. But I like game day. I think I've found like tech companies are the things that get me the closest to game day, which is essentially like, you do all this prep, right? You do all this research, you're scouting, you're putting your like plays together, you're getting your team prepared, and then you watch it unfold like 5 minutes at a time. And then you have a minute to make a decision about, is it working? Is it not? We got to fix something. Right. And so to me, tech has been like the closest to that I can get that high that of like, I got to make decisions fast. We got to be better. We got to figure it out. We got to go. Cause the goal is to win. Right. And so I do like, that is the piece of coaching that I miss the most, but I do feel like I get that out of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
really
awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
So let's talk about, you talked about so many formative moments in there. Let's talk about an everyday leadership principle.
Yeah.
Something that you've picked up along the way that has now become part of how you lead the spaces that you're in.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing I failed so miserably at when I first started coaching is I was like, well, everybody just needs to do what I did, and then they'll have success, right? Yeah. Like just do the things I did. And then, but I think so much of coaching is about really understanding your people and finding their special and particular gifts, and then like fanning that flame as hard as you possibly can. And so to me, I'm always trying to figure out like what's motivating people, what projects excite them, what things do they want to get involved with, what are they concerned about outside of maybe their work day. And to me, that's the biggest thing of just like knowing the person to then be able to get the most out of them. Because I think that's where I tend to have a high bar, but I also will walk right alongside people in that. And so to me, it's about making sure that I understand what does the best of Alex look like, right? What does that look like for them to show up in the world and be the best version of themselves and not just say like, do these things because I found success in them.
Do you feel like that got there because you were like, I didn't have that, so I want to be that? Or did it come from, I had a couple of reference points and that really helped me and showed me kind of this as a way?
Yeah, I think I was able to see that a lot. I go back to, it's so funny. Like my husband does this to me still because he knows it gives me the shivers. But like my head coach at Green Bay, he just was a very, the father-like figure to all of us. We just wanted to please him. Like he had all of us wrapped around his finger. Like we just wanted to please him. He was such a good person, cared so deeply about us that we like really played for him a lot. But it's so funny. Like, I was sophomore and playing point and I got picked at half court by one of our seniors, and he just like very quietly didn't yell, like ball rolls back and he hands it to me and he's like, whenever you're ready, Alex. And I was like, just like one of those where
try
you're like,
again.
Yeah. So whenever my husband wants to get the best of me, he's like, whenever you're ready.
That's
Alex.
so good.
Wow.
But I think it's just one of those things, right? Where it was like, I wasn't like berated. I wasn't like pushing. It was just like, hey, I know there's more. Like, I know there's more. Like, step into it. And so I got to see that a lot. I got pushed a lot. And then also as with jobs as well, where I would get into a position where, somebody would give me a project or I got a promotion, and I would literally look at my like supervisor and be like, are you serious? Like, you want me to do this? And they're like, yeah, you got this. And it's like, okay, all right, well, you trust me, so I guess I should trust me too. So just have been given multiple opportunities to do things like that.
Yeah, there's so much in that too, of that like nature nurture conversation of like the cultures that we come from, the cultures that we come out of, right? I think that's often where we see leaders model what they've been a part of. And so to be a part of a healthy sports culture, to be a part of a healthy team, then translates into how you lead others. And I think that's, as we go back to that youth sports conversation, like there's so much value in youth sports leadership elevating, because it creates players who ultimately become leaders that are better for society, better for their families, better for communities. Like there's so much value in that.
How do you move from just like a participant in a culture that is very broken to multiplying culture that's healthy, whether that's in the context of youth sports, whether that's in the context of our workplace, in our own home, all those different things. In a new initiative that we're starting, it's like if the culture stinks and you start something, it's kind of on you. Right? Like that, those are things that I've bumped into the last 5 years. It's like, if there's something that's not great, like I got to have some agency and ownership of that. And what can we do together to multiply these threads of culture that we want it to be seen and felt differently as we go about our lives.
Yeah, that's so good. So Alex, what's something that you would encourage our listeners in their everyday leadership, right? If you were sitting down and having coffee with someone who's just asking questions about what it means to be an everyday leader, what would you encourage them in?
I think like everybody, I think a lot of people associate arriving in a leadership position with arriving, right? And to me, the thing that has allowed me to become a leader and allowed me to become a better leader is growth. And so continuing to pour into my learning, continuing to take time away for my development, and making sure that I'm still like, that the last thing I read about how to hold an effective meeting is not like, I don't end there, right? That I continue to keep looking for content around those things. Like, what is it that I'm not thinking of, I'm missing, that would help me continue to grow in that space? And I know it can feel exhausting because it's like a never ending journey. But I do think that like the more time that you take to pour into yourself, the more confident you're going to show up in those spaces and the better the leader that you're going to be able to become.
And transformation takes time. So like that's one of those that quest of everyone's like, well, man, I want to be seen as a leader, and it's and all these different things. It's like you have to transform, you have to change, regardless of your title, position. I think actually, if you hold a title, you actually have a deeper responsibility to embody that, but the relational leadership as opposed to just positional leadership and all those kinds of dynamics. But I think that's what this kind of idea that I've heard you speak about of like through basketball, through other things, like what does a more integrated life look like? What does it mean to be very human in our interactions and not just transactional, even when there's a scoreboard, even when there is like outputs that are expected? What does it mean to approach that differently? So I think that, man, it's such good stuff.
Totally. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I think, it's really hard to get outcomes out of people being like autocratic, right? Like I just think sometimes people get to the idea of like leadership means that you're in control and you're kind of running the show. But like you have less control in leadership than you do as an individual contributor. Like, because you now are responsible for other people's actions, which you can't directly impact, right? So, like influence is important, but trust, oh my gosh, trust. Like people will run through a wall for people that they trust. But if you are just trying to like, get a behavior for a day, for a week, for a month, people aren't going to uphold that if it's with a stick, right? Like they want to trust you. They want to feel like they're a part of something. And that's really what I got at both Green Bay and Leslie, was to be a valuable contributing member of a larger group where, it wasn't seen as like a hierarchy, or like we were all just trying to run in the same direction and I needed to play my role. Yeah.
And I think as a dad, I have learned more about trust and how that impacts my leadership than even when I was leading a team full time of my kids constantly asking, well, why are you telling me to do this? And instead of just like the often answer of like, because I said so, I'm your dad. It's, hey, I believe this is best for you because, and having that conversation. Our son is 8, and now having like very intellectual conversations with him about the reason we're asking him to clean up his room, the reason we're asking him to brush his teeth, right? Like the simple things has built so much trust in our relationship that there are times where I say, hey buddy, can you do this? And he's just on it and doesn't ask a question anymore. And so I think that has taught me so much about trust then that transferred into how I led a team, how I've led groups in the past. So, Alex, talk to us about a book, a podcast, something that is inspiring you right now.
Yeah, actually, to kind of like bring it back to where we started with some of the, foster and adoption stuff. I've been listening to the Forgotten podcast. It's by the Forgotten Initiative. So essentially an organization that's focused on fostering and adoption. And man, it's just really cool to hear individual stories. It's really cool to hear, different organizations that are popping up. There's one out of Minnesota that's called the Real Project, which essentially, a lot of the times foster kiddos can become their rap sheet or like what you see on a 2D piece of paper as they're looking to get adopted. And so what Real Project does is they take these kids because they are kids, right? Like they have like friends and dreams and hopes and all of these things that I think get lost in that sheet. And so they take them and they ask them like what kind of adventure that you would want to go on. And so they'll take a kid like horseback riding and then ask some simple questions and they'll like splice together and put together videos that then go along with their, portfolio as people are trying to adopt. So just a lot of really cool organizations out there that are trying to promote, and move forward, a really broken part of our society. And so it's really gives a lot of life. I always like take something away from it or, I need to like look into that organization or think through of how, we could maybe partner with this person or learn from them. So it's been really inspiring for me to listen to and just always a good, like, helps me feel better, like about the problem space and what can be done.
So talk to us a little bit about foster care, adoption, how that is something, how did that become something that's really, breaking your heart that you're getting involved with? What does that look like? And then what are you kind of up to in all of that? Yeah.
So this has been kind of this long journey of just, I went through a program. So I attend Traders Point Christian Church and I went through a program called Rooted there. And at the end of it, they encourage you into service project. And for me, I'm just like not the greeter type. Like I'm not the like, I'll make conversation. My husband is, he's great at this. He's the kind of person that asks your day in an elevator. So, for me, I was like, I'm a little more of like narrow and deep. And so wanted to find something that I could do. And so we have a foster and adoption ministry at Traders and decided to get involved with that. I'm good with organizing, good with logistics. So decided to be a team leader, which essentially means that I'm organizing a group of people who have mobilized to help support a family, awesome. That's fostering. And so our first family that we got to work with, our foster mom, Casey, I mean, she's incredible, but she just she didn't want to ask for anything. She just, when it came down to it, we were doing Monday meals for them and that was great. But, I'd be like, can we do the laundry? Can I clean your house? She's like, really? No, we're good. But she just loved to talk. So we would end up talking on a weekly basis and she would tell me about her kiddo's case. And we were talking about all of the, just extenuating circumstances. Her foster kiddo had, developmental disabilities, learning disabilities a lot. He was 10 years old. So, and they kind of decided that they weren't going to be his forever home. So there was just a lot of stuff to navigate, a lot of stickiness. And so we talked about a lot of those things. And as we were going through those conversations and the things that she was telling me and experiencing, I was like, there's just got to be a better way. Like there's got to be a better way to humanize this 10-year-old boy that, will be a contributing member of society, can change and turn from the past that was delivered to him that he had no responsibility in having. And so essentially just started to think through some things, hypothesize around some things. And it really wasn't until I started meeting with that coach where, she was just like, well, what else do you have kind of going on or you thinking through? And I was like, well, there's this thing. And I kind of shared it with her. She's like, you should write that down. And I was like, nah. like, no. And so she kept pushing me. I finally did. And when I kind of started to write things down, I started crying, and I was like, okay, so I care about this. There's something here. I probably need to pursue this. And so really, like, in every other facet of my life, I kind of beeline towards things, right? Like, I just, once it's in my head, I can't let go. And I'm just nailing away at it. This is the first time I've ever really kind of let go and been like, God, just, you got this. Like, whatever's supposed to be next. Like, if it's, I help one more person, if it's, you know, there's a conversation where I can connect two foster parents together to talk, like, whatever it is. And he really has just been pushing me and nudging me it's been fun. Like, even when I've hit stops, I was telling the group that I met with here at Wayfinders, but I was at an airport traveling for work, and I couldn't find a charger. I was trying all over the place to plug in. And I had kind of felt like I had hit a wall with some of this stuff of like, maybe this was as far as I was going to take it. And plug into a charger. A woman before me was working just fine. Well, it doesn't work for me. So I'm like, okay. So I go find another place. I plug in, and then I go sit down, and a woman opens up her computer, hops on a call. She was a caseworker, and she was talking through, and I was just like, all right, no, not done yet, right? Yeah. So there's been these little nudges, and through this, I've just been introduced to all these wonderful people here, particularly in Indianapolis, that are trying to do incredible things around the space. And even if it's not just the foster and adoption space, it's like just betterment of like community within, you know, the Indianapolis area. And so a lot of people that are willing to help and jump on board. And so it's been, that's where it's at right now. It's just kind of trying to figure out what is the thing that helps make this a little better. I feel like starting to hone it can create a way for foster parents to ask for more help instead of acting like they don't need it. And making that request a little bit easier. And then on the other side, trying to figure out how to like really evangelize and mobilize people to do the work. So it's kind of like looking at tech that might be able to bring that together.
Yeah. And I remember as we were chatting about this and you were sharing it, and it was like your story, tech background, seeing needs, how that all can kind of come together. And there are times, you know, we sit and chat with a lot of people who have various ideas. Some that are like, whoa, huge. Some that are kind of like, okay, feels pretty realistic. And then some that are like kind of lower, and we celebrate all of those. And in this cohort that we have coming up, like, there are just such class quality people whose hearts are like, they're compelled. Like, that's the thing that I've noticed in these ones where actually something shifts is like, I can't shake this. Like, I can't, like, I'm compelled to do this. I have to do this. I don't know all of the path. And that's what's been really cool about this interaction over the last several months with you is it's like, okay, we know that you know that this is a big idea. I don't think you have this like savior complex and like, we're just going to fix this whole thing. Yeah. However, if we can help 5 families, right? And ultimately, you know, how many, you know, children does that represent helping and all those kinds of things. And it's like the courage to go again. And the communal sense of people who are like, let me introduce you. Has been like really, really cool. And so I just want to say to all of you, like, if this is a topic that is breaking your heart, if this is something that you're involved with, if this is something that you have insight around or want to get to know what Alex is up to and what she's going to be building through this. Is it a nonprofit? Is it just a thing? Is it a product? Is it a business? We don't know yet. Like, we haven't. We're gonna find out over the next 6 months, right? But I would just say, man, feel free. You can reach out to me here, and we'll get you in touch with Alex. It's Brandon at yourwayfinders.org. We'll get you in touch with Alex because she doesn't have like a website for this thing yet or all that. So it's in process. But if this is something you're interested in, want to have conversations around, we'd really welcome that. And I appreciate you sharing about all of this and your conviction around it and your heart for it. And we want to say thanks for hanging out with us this morning.
This is fun.
Thanks
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for tuning in to this episode of the For Everyday Leaders podcast by Wayfinders. We hope it helps you lead in the everyday spaces and moments of life.
Yeah, and we'd love for you to continue joining us on the journey by subscribing to the For Everyday Leaders podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Alex, thanks so much. This conversation was so exciting, so helpful, and I can't wait to see where this new adventure goes for you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was great. I appreciate you inviting me.
Thanks, Alex.